Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. I'm Jamie. That's Dave. That's Adam. We have a segment now we're calling Like Him, Don't Love Him. Players that you're probably starting. We may have ranked too high, and you're going to maybe have a little bit concerned about putting them into your lineup because the matchup could be tough. They have been struggling lately. Situations are struggling around them. But let's get right to it now with the first guy here, and that's Jonathan Taylor, who we know has not lived up to expectations. And the situation with the Colts has been a little bit hard to trust. No Quentin Nelson in this game. Carson Wentz has struggled. T.Y. Hilton's been out, so the passing game's been tough to trust. And now they have to face the Baltimore Ravens on Monday night. You know what Baltimore's going to do. They're going to try and clamp down on Jonathan Taylor. So I'm still starting Taylor. I don't love it. I'd like to see him play better. I'd like to see a little bit more involved in the passing game. Maybe if Nyheim Hines is out, we see a little bit more from Jonathan Taylor in that regard like we saw in week 1. But it feels as if we're just starting Taylor because we drafted him in the first round. Dave, do you feel that way?
Not exactly. Let me ask you a question. If you had the chance to take 104 rushing yards and that's it right now, would you do it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's how many rush yards that the Ravens allowed last week to the Denver Broncos. And that was when Drew Lock was playing and they were struggling. By the time Lock got in, the game was so far behind that they weren't really running. But I don't think this is as dominant of a run defense as it's been in the past. And I am very encouraged by what I saw from Jonathan Taylor last week. Number one, he's been that guy all season long. He just really hasn't had as many opportunities as we'd like. Last week he got the opportunities. It was against a bad Dolphins defense. This is a step up in competition. Right, this is a step up in competition. But I still think Jonathan Taylor is worth starting. In the event that he scores a touchdown, we've seen the Ravens give up 5 rushing touchdowns to running backs this year, and I think he still has a chance to get close to 100 total yards.
If he doesn't score, though, it's going to be a bad day for Jonathan Taylor. I wish it was playing out better for him so far this season, but so far it's been a little bit ugly. All right, Adam, who's the guy you like, don't love?
Yeah, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think a lot of the players that we're going to like, don't love at the running back position are players that don't have a big role in the passing game. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, does he get the high-value touches? He's getting a lot of carries the last 2 games. He's coming off of 2 really good games in a row, one of them against what I think is a good run defense in Philadelphia. But the Bills have been incredible. No running back has more than 45 rushing yards. Only one running back has scored a touchdown. That was Antonio Gibson on a 72-yard pass. Catch and run, I guess we should say. So here's the thing. Clyde's not totally involved in the passing game, a little bit there. And he's not really the goal line back either. So I could see an 80 total yard, 1 or 2 catch game, and 8 to 10 fantasy points depending on your format. I'm starting him, but I'm not feeling great about it.
No, I'm with you. It's not the best setup. You know, I think we're going to get fooled by what he showed us the last 2 weeks with the rushing production, certainly with the catches for touchdowns. So I'm nervous about Clyde Edwards-Helaire myself, and I would try and sit him if you possibly can. All right, Dave, who's the guy you like, don't love?
I am nervous about Josh Jacobs for the Las Vegas Raiders. Another home matchup for him. It's against Chicago. This is a Bears defense that's only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs all year. And I know that we're supposed to feel good about Josh Jacobs getting 5 catches last week. Yay! That gives him a safe PPR floor. It's a career high, and we've seen it before from John Gruden where he will lean on him a little bit and then back away from Josh Jacobs as a passing downs guy. I don't know the status of Peyton Barber for this game.
He's out.
That's good. But Kenyon Drake is still there, and Derek Carr is still there. And this offensive line is really terrible. And I just can't help but think that at some point in this game, the Raiders are just going to go into pass-heavy mode, and we won't see Josh Jacobs come through. You want to talk about a running back that needs a touchdown in order to be good? We've already seen it this season from Josh Jacobs. Week 1, he scores. He's great for fantasy. His last game, he doesn't score, and he's a fantasy nightmare, even with the 5 catches.
Yeah, I'm also nervous about Jacobs. In fact, I am going to bench him in a PPR league for a running back in the same game, and that's Damian Williams. Jacobs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they feel very similar to me. He's running the ball so poorly. 10 for 34, 13 for 40. You really do need that touchdown. And they're at their best when they're throwing the football. Keep in mind, one thing in his favor, Akeem Hicks may not play for the Bears, so that would help. But Jacobs, so far of the 3 running backs we've mentioned, I think he'd be last. I mean, he'd definitely be behind Taylor and then very close with Clyde.
The thing that I like, they're 5.5-point favorites at home. We know when they're winning, he does his best work, and I think they're going to win this game against the Bears. And I think he's going to have an opportunity to score. I like the fact that if not 5 catches, he'll still get 3 catches in this game. They hate Kenyon Drake, and so if there is no Barber and Drake is the only other option, I think we'll see Jacobs heavily involved, hopefully in the passing game as well. So I kind of like Josh Jacobs as a number 2 running back this week. Another running back that I'm concerned about, again, you're starting him, but it's Antonio Gibson. We've seen the work in the passing game get minimized by the week. Only 2 catches at most in each of the last 3 games, 5 catches combined over the last 3 games. Now, he has scored in each of the last 2 games. The 73-yard catch that Adam referenced was Antonio Gibson scoring against the Bills. Scored on the ground last week against Atlanta. But this is not going to be an easy matchup against the Saints defense that is probably pissed off about how things went taking on Saquon Barkley last week, certainly losing that game. And now you have Gibson at less than 100%. So Sportsline, as you see, out on Gibson as a starter. Keith and I a little bit lower, Dave, yours a little bit higher, but we're all in the same range. Still as a top 20 running back, but I'm concerned about Antonio Gibson taking on the Saints defense, especially if he's not 100%.
And especially because he's not even getting all of the red zone work. We've seen J.D. McKissic have a slight edge there over the course of the season, and when it's third down or when they're playing from behind, forget about it. You're not going to see Gibson unless maybe it's one of those third and short plays, or maybe they're at the goal line and it's not the hurry-up type of offense. Then they might call on Gibson to come in. But I think he's one of these running backs that does need a touchdown in order to come through. I do like the fact that he should be in line for around 14 to 16 touches in the game, and I think he can do okay with them. So I like him as a number 2 running back.
All right, we'll see how Gibson performs. And again, still not a guarantee he's going to play, but at least at this point we see he's trending in the right direction. But you want to check your roster and check certainly CBSSports.com, CBS Sports HQ before plugging Antonio Gibson in there for sure. All right, Adam, next guy we're looking at here is Amari Cooper. You like him, you just don't love him.
Yeah, I don't even know how much I like him at this point. He has 12 targets and 9 catches in his last 3 games. Cowboys just are not throwing the ball, and they've been throwing so much to the tight ends as well. And the Giants are awful against tight ends, so that should continue this week. You're talking about a team that has been around 25, 27 pass attempts 3 straight games. Now, I think that's a little bit fluky, and I'm hoping it'll be closer to 35. If he can get 7, 8 targets, then he should be pretty good. But the other factor is he's injured. He's got a hamstring injury. He's going to play, but not 100%. And the other factor is James Bradbury did a pretty good job against him last year. He looms out there as someone that could shadow Amari Cooper. So I think we're one more game away. It's kind of like Robert Woods. Robert Woods, he came alive in week 5, but if he had one more bad game, I think people would have really benched him. One more game from Prescott where he's not throwing to Cooper, one more game from Cooper where he's not doing much. I think we're going to start talking about benching him, but I will start him reluctantly this week.
I'm with you. It's hard to get a guy of his potential and caliber and ceiling out of your lineup. There's always the FOMO factor. You don't want to put him on your bench and he has one of these games where he goes off. But I think it's going to be a touchdown or bust type of game for Amari Cooper, because if the Cowboys offense operates the way it's been operating with the ground game, Cooper and potentially CeeDee Lamb could have a tough go of it this week. All right, next guy we're looking at here, Dave, is Chris Godwin. You like him, you just don't love him.
Just don't love him. When we see Tom Brady have huge games, that's when Godwin steps up. Last week, we didn't see Brady have a big game, and Godwin's numbers were so bad. He was below 10 PPR points. That makes me want to cry. But the truth of the matter is that he's going to play the Dolphins this week, and it's a great matchup on paper when you think about it. But the Dolphins probably aren't going to be that much of a challenge to the Tampa Bay offense. It's one of the reasons why I believe Leonard Fournette is the start of the week here. So I am nervous about using Godwin, expecting high catch volume. His over-under for receptions from Caesars Sportsbook is 4.5. So they don't think he's going to catch a ton of passes this week. Evans caught a ton of passes in week 4. So did Antonio Brown. Godwin was the odd man out. We've got him ranked as a top 24 receiver. You're probably going to start him anyway, but I think there is a case to be made for guys like Jamar Chase, Adam Thielen, even T. Higgins, who's not on your screen right now, to be better than Chris Godwin this week.
Adam, before you answer, I just want to ask you a question, Dave, because Brian Flores said that Xavier Howard and Brian Jones, he's hopeful both will play Sunday. How much does things change if those two guys are out? Because that's arguably the best cornerback duo in the league.
But they're outside corners, and usually it's Godwin who's
but
playing
still,
in the
for
slot.
Evans as well. Just in
I think it helps them, but I think it's going to continue to lead to a place where we see Tampa Bay build a huge lead in this game, and in the second half, Tom Brady's throwing 5 passes.
That's just not really their MO, and Brady's coming off a somewhat disappointing game last week where he did not throw a touchdown pass. I'm looking at the game log right now. He had one game in 2020 where he didn't throw a touchdown pass. It was a terrible game against the Saints. The next week, 341 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 46-23 victory over the Panthers. So I think Brady gets back on track, and I'm not there yet with Godwin. This is not someone that I really hesitate because he is so efficient. I mean, 2 years in a row, he's been basically a top 12 wide receiver. In fact, 2 years ago, he was number 2, and he's done that on a pretty low amount of targets when you compare him to other elite wide receivers. So he doesn't need a ton of targets. He finds the end zone. He's just really, really good. And he is a slot receiver going up against a team whose strength is on the outside, like you mentioned, Dave. I'm not there yet with Godwin. I think he's a totally fine start. I'm cool with it.
I am as well, but I certainly can see the concerns based on the lack of targets over the last couple of weeks. All right, next guy we're looking at here is Brandin Cooks. Speaking of targets going down, he went from 14 targets in week 2, 11 targets in week 3, 7 targets in week 4 against Buffalo, his worst game of the season, 5 catches, 47 yards. My biggest concern is his quarterback is a rookie, taking on Bill Belichick. He destroys rookie quarterbacks. Could be a real ugly game for Brandin Cooks. I think he'll still be 7+ targets, which is nice. Hopefully some garbage time production. But as we saw, Belichick frustrated Tom Brady last week. He's going to frustrate the hell out of Mac Jones. It could be a bad day for Brandin Cooks all the way around.
It's Davis Mills, and yeah, I think it could be a real tough time for Brandin Cooks. You said Mac Jones. Let me tell you something. Brandin Cooks wishes he could have Mac Jones throwing him passes right now. I'm nervous about Brandin Cooks as well. I think the only place you can feel okay starting him is in full PPR leagues. That's why he still barely makes the cut in our consensus rankings as a top 24 guy. He is outside of my top 24, and certainly in non-PPR, I think he's a no-go. I don't think you can trust him to get you 80, 90 total yards.
All right, we're going to do one more here, and that's Kyle Pitts. So we have the situation that we know is developing, no Calvin Ridley. So Pitts has a situation here where maybe a spike in targets, maybe a spike in production, taking a Jets defense that's given up only 2 touchdowns to the opposing passing game so far this season. So, Dave, what are you concerned about with Kyle Pitts taking on this Jets defense?
It's not the target volume. I think he's going to get the targets. It's a matter of him actually coming through for a touchdown, which we haven't seen from him yet this year, and we haven't seen him come through for a ton of yards in a game. I think his high is right around 75 yards. So I'm nervous about him coming as a big-time fantasy tight end. But because the targets will be there, one of the arguments that we make for tight ends every single week is, are they getting the type of target volume that can make them good? And I think Pitts is going to do that. But I think there are a lot of other tight ends in fantasy right now that are also doing that. Dalton Schultz in Dallas is one. Gesicki is definitely going to be another. Pitts is behind those guys for me, even though he's in a situation where there is no Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I can see it, Dave. You know, we haven't used this term this year, but this is the Joe Boo game for Kyle Pitts for you podcast listeners who remember that one. Yeah, because if he doesn't come through, then we'll do it ourselves. Next week, we'll find another tight end. I'm going to start Kyle Pitts. The Calvin Ridley situation is a big deal in terms of the target share, I think, for Kyle Pitts and the red zone targets. You know, Calvin Ridley's someone that Matt Ryan could rely on close to the end zone. Kyle Pitts actually does have 6 red zone targets this year, only 1 inside the 10. But hopefully that changes a little bit. And yeah, I mean, this is it. I think even with the nice statistics that we've seen from the Jets pass defense, only allowing 2 touchdowns through the air this year, I still think this is, at the end of the day, one of the worst defenses in football, and time for Kyle Pitts to step up. So he's a top 10 guy for sure. I think he's probably closer to 6 or 7 for me.
They've really only faced one legit tight end so far this season. That was Noah Fant. You know, you could say maybe the Patriots guys, but we know how the Patriots offense has operated so far this season. Fant only 3 targets in that game, and that was really just the Broncos running the ball and not really having to throw the ball very much. So we'll see if this is an opportunity for Pitts lining up outside, playing some at the tight end spot, but hopefully Matt Ryan featuring him, maybe the most that we've seen so far because Ridley's not on the field. I'm still starting Kyle Pitts as well. Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.